On the morning of Sunday, February 22, 2026, the killing of Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, alias El Mencho, top leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, was announced. El Mencho, 59 years old, was co-founder of the CJNG, an organization that, in just a decade, managed to expand across much of the national territory, consolidating itself as one of the criminal structures with the greatest operational capacity and level of violence. The government of the United States was offering up to $15 million for information leading to his capture, while in Mexico, he was listed as one of the top priority targets, basically the Mexican Osama bin Laden. What began as a chain of rumors accompanied by outbreaks of violence in different parts of the country ended up escalating into one of the most significant events for Mexican national security in the last decade. According to preliminary information, the operation combined high-level strategic intelligence, interinstitutional coordination, intelligence provided by the United States, and precise tactical execution. Elements from Mexican Army Special Forces and the National Guard participated, along with the Attorney General's Office, the Mexican National Intelligence Center, and military intelligence units. The question now is inevitable. How was this mega operation really conceived? What role did the intelligence shared by the United States play? And above all, what does the death of the Lord of the Roosters mean for the future of the war against narco-trafficking? Who will be his successor? And how will Mexico's criminal map be reconfigured? Well, you are about to find out. This is Jorge Rojas speaking. Welcome to Armapedia. You see, the first signs of the operation began a day earlier, February 21st, 2026. Residents of the exclusive TAPALPA Country Club complex in Jalisco reported unusual overflights. Two military helicopters made a couple of passes over the area and then withdrew. Nothing scandalous at first glance, but in TAPALPA, Jalisco, and especially in that residential zone, this kind of military movement is not normal. TAPALPA is a pueblo mágico and a tourist getaway destination known for its forest landscapes and isolated cabins in the Sierra Madre del Sur of Jalisco, although it is well known that some areas are strongholds of the CJNG. That was the first sign. However, on the morning of Sunday, February 22nd, around 7 a.m., just as dawn broke over the forested mountains, the scene changed radically. Witnesses reported the sighting of four military helicopters, possibly UH-60 Blackhawks, armed with M134 miniguns, accompanied by two T-6 Texan, two aircraft from the Mexican Air Force. At 7:20 a.m., tighter maneuvers began over the country club subdivisions and Rancho El Pinto, located about 7 kilometers from downtown Tapalpa, near the Nogal Dam. Minutes later, the first bursts of gunfire were heard. Armed helicopters, according to multiple testimonies, were firing toward the ground while federal forces advanced along rural roads leading to Rancho El Pinto. The confrontation reportedly lasted approximately 2 hours. For years, El Mencho built a complex protection network, safe houses, surveillance rings, alternate routes, and shelters distributed throughout Jalisco, Colima, Nayarit, Guanajuato, and Michoacán. His constant mobility was his main shield. That operational discipline fed for years the perception that his capture was practically impossible, very similar to how many thought about El Mayo Zambada. Now, although official information is limited and many details may not be revealed soon, everything points to the central events occurring at Rancho El Pinto, located just 2 kilometers from the Tapalpa Country Club complex. It is not known with certainty what El Mencho was doing at that ranch or nearby. It could have been a rest period in the forests of the Sierra Madre del Sur, on perhaps a strategic meeting. We do not know. What is consistent with his history is that he traveled with his closest security circle, essentially his Praetorian Guard, in almost all his movements. What they apparently failed to detect was that the operation was already underway. According to the official statement from the Secretariat of National Defense, special forces of the Mexican Army, possibly from the Joint Special Forces or the Special Forces Brigade of Paratrooper Riflemen, supported by the Immediate Reaction Special Force of the National Guard, executed an operation based on months of strategic intelligence with collaboration from the National Intelligence Center and the Specialized Prosecutor's Office for Organized Crime, FEMDO, who in turn had received extremely important intelligence packages from the United States for this operation. And whether under the approval of President Claudia Sheinbaum, Security Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch, Defense Secretary Ricardo Trevilla Trejo, or all three, someone at the top of the security apparatus gave the green light. During the intense exchange of fire, 4 CJNG members were killed on site, and 3 others were gravely wounded. All were allegedly members of El Mencho's innermost security ring. In some closed channels, alleged names of high-level CJNG members have begun circulating. Among the aliases mentioned are El Sapo, El Alacran, El Rebelde, El R1, who according to some is the son of El Tío, La R3, El J1, El Fresa, El Tigre, El Chaparro, and Commander Pai. It is important to emphasize that all these names and aliases come from unofficial sources, and their participation and death while attempting to protect El Mencho have not been confirmed by Mexican or U.S. authorities. Continuing, among the 3 gravely wounded CJNG members was Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes himself, alias El Mencho, or the Lord of the Roosters, as well as one of his most relevant lieutenants, Gonzalo Mendoza Gaitan, alias El Sapo, identified as one of the most violent and strategic operators within the cartel. During the operation, authorities seized homemade armored vehicles known as monsters, or narco-tanks, rocket launchers with anti-armor capability, and potential to threaten low-flying aircraft, high-caliber assault rifles, and light machine guns. As I mentioned, at the time of recording this video, the information is still very limited, but it is already enough to reconstruct a preliminary picture of what occurred. As the hours passed, around 9:34 a.m., in Jalisco, Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro confirmed what many already suspected. A high-impact operation was underway in the municipality of TAPALPA. The death of El Mencho triggered an immediate reaction from the CJNG. From the early hours of the day, road blockades, vehicle burnings, and attacks on stores and establishments were reported in various areas of Jalisco. In several cities, public transportation services were suspended as a preventive measure, while authorities urged the population to remain in their homes for safety reasons. As the hours advanced, the blockades spread to neighboring states. Guanajuato, Michoacán, Nayarit, and Aguascalientes reported similar incidents, and later events were recorded in Tamaulipas and other states hundreds of kilometers from the initial epicenter. The geographic expansion suggests a coordinated reaction aimed more at generating pressure and chaos than at controlling specific territory. Given the magnitude of the criminal response, Jalisco authorities activated Code Red, the highest alert level in the state. This tactic used by Mexican cartels, as seen with the CJNG, is known in security circles as urban distraction terrorism. It does not seek to conquer territory, but to saturate the state's response capacity, forcing it to disperse forces to attend to fires, protect civilians, and restore order. The real objective is to dilute pressure on the critical point of the operation. Seriously, this was probably one of the largest episodes of narco blockades and federal deployment to secure highways in Mexico's recent history. In the Bajío region, the mobilization was impressive, with convoys, checkpoints, air presence, and simultaneous operations in multiple municipalities. Those who were there know exactly what I mean. However, it was not until 11:10 a.m. that an official statement from defense confirmed that Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes had died. The official statement made it clear that the cartel leader did not die immediately at the point of contact. According to the information, he was gravely wounded during the confrontation and later evacuated by air, presumably in a military helicopter or aircraft, toward Mexico City to receive specialized medical attention. But he died during the air transfer. And it is essential to repeat, according to the official version, El Mencho was captured alive but gravely wounded during the operation and later succumbed to his injury. From an operational and legal standpoint, this constitutes a capture followed by death due to combat injuries, not an execution or an instantaneous death at the scene. Just imagine the scene. El Mencho, gravely wounded alongside 2 of his escorts, including El Sapo, is immediately evacuated in a military aircraft bound for Mexico City. The protocol was clear: urgent aerial extraction. And mid-flight, slowly bleeding out, the most powerful man in organized crime in Mexico dies. Not in a cell, not in a courtroom, but between the mountains and the sky after an armed confrontation with special forces that ultimately ended his life. Unlike previous operations that ended in tactical withdrawals or episodes like the Culiacanazos in Sinaloa, this time the government of Mexico and Jalisco sustained the offensive until the priority objective was achieved. After the official statement from the Secretariat of National Defense, President Claudia Sheinbaum publicly congratulated the Mexican Army and National Guard, validating the result of the deployment and sending a clear political message of institutional backing. For his part, Security and Citizen Protection Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch highlighted the participation of the Mexican Air Force and the Army, emphasizing interinstitutional coordination and confirming the veracity of the reported events. The cost for the state was also real. 3 Special Forces elements were wounded during the confrontation against El Mencho's security ring and unfortunately lost their lives. However, with updated information as of the close of February 22, 2026, the national tally reports 21 National Guard members fallen in the line of duty, in addition to 18 Mexican Army members and 3 officers, as well as 13 wounded personnel in different parts of the country. From Armapedia, we send our condolences to the families of the fallen Mexican soldiers. Now, the body of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, as well as that of El Sapo, reportedly arrived in Mexico City around 4:30 p.m. under strict security protocols. Upon arrival, El Mencho's body was received by specialized forensic personnel and transferred in a forensic unit to facilities under federal custody. Those who do not live in Mexico City can hardly grasp the magnitude of the police and military deployment that took place in the capital. The operational destination was FEMDO, where the corresponding legal procedures in high-profile cases were activated. In these situations, visual recognition is not enough. Complete forensic evaluations are conducted, including legal autopsy, biometric identification tests, fingerprint analysis, DNA genetic comparison, forensic dental examination, and detailed photographic documentation to integrate the investigation file. These protocols not only confirm the identity of the target, but also determine the exact cause of death and preserve the chain of custody. Critical elements when dealing with the killing of a high-value capo. There is a detail that says a lot. The statement from the Mexican Secretariat of National Defense is particularly revealing in mentioning bilateral coordination and cooperation with the United States. That phrase is not decorative. In operational terms, it suggests a much deeper technological and intelligence component than is visible at first glance. In high-value operations like this, signals intelligence, SIGINT, metadata analysis, intelligence fusion, and the use of ISR platforms, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, by the United States are often decisive. Tracking satellite communications, electronic patterns, digital signatures, and logistical movements, an area where U.S. agencies maintain a considerable technological advantage, could have been key in locating the exact refuge in the forested zone of TAPALPA. Our international media, such as Reuters, reported that support existed from the Joint Task Force Countercartels, JTFCC, a structure under U.S. Northern Command designed specifically to map, dismantle, and strike transnational criminal networks that impact U.S. security. However, this task force, made up of multiple U.S. government agencies, aims to consolidate interagency, military, police, and intelligence community information to build detailed target packages on criminal leaders and their logistical networks on both sides of the border. A former U.S. official, speaking anonymously, stated that a detailed dossier had been built on MENCHO. Nonetheless, both U.S. officials and Mexican government sources emphasized that the raid was an operation designed and executed by Mexico, by Mexican soldiers, and without physical participation of U.S. military personnel on the ground. And yes, I understand there may be doubts about that, but the truth is, we will never know. It was not until 7:54 p.m. that Caroline Leavitt, spokesperson for the Donald Trump administration, issued a statement through X confirming that the United States did provide intelligence to the Mexican government to contribute to the success of the operation that culminated in the killing of MENCHO. However, the U.S. spokesperson did not offer additional details about which agency or specific force participated in generating the intelligence, nor clarify whether there was any additional level of U.S. involvement beyond intelligence sharing. The death of MENCHO does not represent merely a symbolic achievement for the Mexican and U.S. governments. It constitutes a direct blow to the center of gravity of a criminal organization that historically operated under a highly centralized command scheme. Unlike the Sinaloa cartel, which today functions more like a federation of factions in civil war, the Jalisco New Generation cartel consolidated for years around vertical disciplined leadership with operational control concentrated in the figure of MENCHO, almost like a dictator, and other high-ranking trusted commanders. That model allowed the CJNG to expand rapidly, impose internal cohesion, and project territorial power for over a decade. However, it also implies a risk. When the leader falls, the vacuum can become a fracture point that leads to more violence. For that reason, many analysts have focused on four key figures who, due to their hierarchy, territorial control, and closeness to the deceased leader, are seen as potential heirs to the criminal empire. Number 1. Juan Carlos Valencia Gonzalez, L03. He is considered by some analysts the natural candidate, identified as MENCHO's stepson, which would grant him symbolic legitimacy within the cartel's internal structure, especially after the capture and extradition of Ruben Oseguera Gonzalez, El Menchito, the biological son of the leader who for years was seen as the direct heir. Beyond the family factor, his operational weight is relevant. L03 is linked to leadership of the so-called elite group, one of the most aggressive CJNG cells. However, his leadership would not be free of tensions. Plaza bosses with greater seniority, territorial autonomy, and financial control could question his authority, especially if they perceive that his legitimacy rests more on the surname than operational consensus. Number 2. Audias Flores Silva, El Jardinero. Perhaps the strategist with the greatest operational power within the CJNG. His closest men call themselves People of the Gardener. He controls synthetic drug production and trafficking in the Pacific Zone and oversees security in the Nayarit stronghold, as well as other zones in Michoacan and Jalisco. He is considered a businessman with strict military discipline, making him a candidate capable of maintaining the CJNG's financial and logistical structure. Number 3. Heraclio Guerrero Martinez, El Tío. He represents the cartel's connection with self-defense networks and local groups in Michoacan, as well as CJNG fuel theft networks. His importance lies in his knowledge of the terrain and strategic alliances to control chemical precursors in the ports of Lázaro Cárdenas and Manzanillo. Although high-ranking, his profile is more that of a regional operator than a global leader. It should also be noted that one of his sons, known as R1, died in the operation against El Mencho. Number 4. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, El Doble R, the operational commander with the most media exposure, known for propaganda videos displaying the cartel's firepower and for ordering the murder of a Mexican influencer. He is one of the plaza bosses in the Guadalajara metropolitan area and responsible for armed responses to federal operations. His loyalty to El Mencho's family has been total, but his impulsive, loud, and violent style could be an obstacle if the organization seeks a stage of lower confrontation with the Mexican state. The fall of El Mencho undoubtedly represents the most significant turning point in the security strategy of the administration led by Claudia Sheinbaum and Secretary Omar Garcia Harfuch. However, history is clear. Drug trafficking in Mexico operates like a hydra. Eliminating one head does not guarantee the disappearance of the body. The real challenge was not only winning the battle in the mountains of Jalisco, but sustaining territorial control, preventing violent fragmentation, and avoiding new regional wars triggered by the power vacuum. The Lord of the Roosters has fallen, but the structure he built remains. Financial networks, armed cells, logistical routes, and mid-level commanders now facing a stage of redefinition. The coming weeks and months will be decisive in determining whether this blow marks the beginning of structural weakening of the CJNG or whether we are witnessing a more aggressive and decentralized reconfiguration. This video is dedicated to the men of the Mexican Army Special Forces and the National Guard who lost their lives during the operation in Jalisco. Their sacrifice in the line of duty will not be forgotten. We honor their bravery, their discipline, and their commitment to the country. Honor and glory to those who fell. Our most sincere solidarity and condolences to their families. We take this opportunity to express our condolences to the families of our comrades who also lost their lives, and recognition to our military personnel who carried out a successful operation. It can be viewed from many perspectives, but it is definitive that they fulfilled their mission. And what was demonstrated? The strength of the Mexican state. There is no doubt about that. Thank you.